Everyone, welcome to today's Science Talk. We're so pleased you could join us for this session on equity in every drop, criteria for equitable access to non-conventional water resources. My name is Dr. Miriam Axel, and I'm thrilled to be your host today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. The Science Talks is our weekly series that highlights the exciting research of UNU-INWEH, and I'm very pleased to share that all of our previous talks from the 2024 series, as well as all of the 2025 talks so far, are available on our website and on our YouTube channel. Our website is unu.edu/INWEH/science-talks with an S. Today's talk, like all of our others, will be recorded, and the video will be made available after the session. I will also conclude with an interactive Q&A session, so please put your questions for today's speaker in the Q&A box, and I will be sure to read them out. Now, I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker. Ms. Nof Afghani is a fellow in water governance and innovation policy at UNU-INWEH, and she's a researcher specializing in water governance with a focus on the equitable use and management of non-conventional water resources. At UNU-INWEH, her work addresses fundamental global challenges related to water governance, emphasizing climate resilience and equitable access. She also explores the scaling up of innovative water management solutions and the adoption of circular water economy principles. She's experienced working as a project manager at ACTED, an international NGO, and her hands-on work in water management in the Global South, combined with her involvement in international development and cooperation, has provided a strong foundation for her academic pursuits. She's currently affiliated with the Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research, working on topics related to sustainability, justice, and the twin transition. She has a BSc in civil engineering from the University of Jordan and a master's in integrated water resources management from the University of Applied Sciences, Cologne, in Germany. And she is now pursuing a PhD at the University of Twente's Department of Governance and Technology for Sustainability. And with that, without further ado, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for introducing me, and thank you everyone for joining. I could start sharing my screen. So just 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So no need to talk about my affiliations. My name is Nof Afghani, and thank you for joining today. And I'm very happy to share the findings of my first PhD paper, which is submitted but still under review, that tries to explore how we can better integrate equity in the planning and management of non-conventional water resources. I'm joining you today from Germany. So it's a good afternoon for me, but yeah, good morning and good afternoon for everyone. So first, I would like to start by saying that around 1.5 billion people, which is almost around a quarter of today's world population, they live in areas and river basins that do not have enough fresh water, either in quantity or quality, to meet the basic water needs. In this map, those areas are presented by the red shaded areas. In another study here, we can see a high correlation between those water-scarce regions and also them adopting new and alternative water solutions in order to face water scarcity. And most of those solutions are non-conventional, so not fresh water coming from the surface water or from the groundwater. So this shows us that there's a need and an urge to rethink water, and this is where non-conventional water resources comes. and it has been widely implemented across different parts of the globe. And the most widely implemented solutions were either desalination of seawater or harvesting rainwater or reusing treated wastewater, whether black water or greywater. But within the context of ensuring that we have just transitions in the water systems, the equitable water access, it needs more attention, and we need to make sure that we achieve equitable water access. And while non-conventional water resources, they do offer promising solutions for water scarce regions to deal with water vulnerability, the question of who's getting access to those solutions, and just as importantly, who can't, is very important. Hence, my PhD now explores that and try to see how we can make non-conventional water solutions not only technically efficient or sound, but also fair. And when we looked into the literature, we saw that equity in access to non-conventional water resources is rarely studied. So despite the growing attention of equity as an overall concept in the water governance literature, and also growing attention of equity in water policy discussions, still it remains sidelined in non-conventional water resources initiatives. Plus, since there are many word applications of those solutions, there is still lack of a comparative synthesis of how those solutions were or were not equitably accessed, and what type of barriers could be faced when implementing them. So this takes me to the guiding objective for the review study that we have conducted. So our guiding objective was that we want to develop a set of equity criteria that can guide the planning, evaluation, and implementation of non-conventional water resources initiatives. And for that, we submitted a review paper, and this review paper was co-authored by Dr. Flores, who's a colleague at University of Twente, and my supervisor, Professor Ozir. In relation to the methodology that we have done, so it was a review study. We conducted a structured literature review. We identified articles from Scopus, and we had a clear and strict exclusion and inclusion criteria. We focused on articles that looked at non-conventional water resources application in the wash sector, in the municipal sector. And this led us to 43 publications. And those 43 publications, they went through a thematic content analysis. And in the thematic content analysis, we had two main goals. First, to understand how equity or equitable access has been approached in those different studies, and also to identify what kind of barriers have been mapped out. So taking you to our first finding of the study, which is equity has many faces. So again, when we looked into how the different study approached equity, we found there are so many different ways. And in order to synthesize that, we grouped the conceptualization into the three overarching dimensions that are commonly used in water justice studies, which are first, distributive equity. So who is getting what, where, and at what cost? Second dimension is the procedural equity, who gets heard, who gets involved and informed. And recognition equity, whose knowledge counts, whose values are seen. And I'm now going to take you to our findings per each dimension. So the first dimension is the distributive equity. And here we identified three main themes from the articles that we have identified. So the theme number one was about water security and water availability. So several studies focused on non-conventional water resources helping in meeting basic human needs while ensuring that the minimum quality and quantity standards are met. Whereas other studies focused more on the ability of non-conventional water resources to satisfy users' water demand needs, and looked more at a sectoral level. And most of these studies were actually quantitative. Theme number 2 is about accessibility, because access is not only about volume, but it's also about where and to whom those infrastructure are installed. And those studies here, they focused more on the spatial and the socio-economic disparities in access to infrastructure and in access to service delivery. And the third theme, which was also a major theme, which is affordability. So while technologies for non-conventional water resources are already there, many users were actually priced out. So here the studies emphasize that there's a need for non-conventional water resources to remain economically accessible through subsidies or equitable pricing models, if such solutions aim to improve water security for different users. Second dimension is procedural equity. Again, here we identified three themes that are very interconnected. So the first theme was meaningful participation. So making sure that communities not only attend meetings, so not dealing with it as a checklist, rather really engaging communities in the planning and design. And for that, we need to ensure that there is an inclusive representation, that diverse stakeholders are taking part in these discussions where their voices and local expertise are heard. And the third theme is about transparency and access to information. So also information about non-conventional water systems, trade-offs, risks, long-term responsibility. Those information needs to be communicated clearly and in an understandable way so that users can make informed decisions, and they can raise concerns if needed. And third, recognition equity. So here we identified two themes. Any non-conventional water resources project needs to acknowledge that also users, they have diverse needs, they have diverse experiences, and they have diverse coping abilities, and this should be considered when planning a non-conventional water resource project. And the second theme is about knowledge pluralism, so also respecting and integrating any local or indigenous knowledge if available, and treating it in close connection with the technical knowledge that is also available. So in short, distributive equity is not just a technical issue. What we found is that it's deeply shaped by the policies, by the economics, and by the geography. Second, procedural equity means more than checking a box. So it's about building trust, building legitimacy, and shared ownership of non-conventional water resources solutions. And lastly, procedural equity without ensuring that also there is recognition equity, it risks tokenism. And now I would like to move to our second finding of the study, which is about barriers. And what we found about barriers is that barriers towards equitable access to such solutions are not isolated. So they rather reinforce each other. They are systemic. And I would like to show you how we came to that conclusion through a zoom in one of our in one of our case studies, which is Mumbai case study. So what Mumbai is has adopted rainwater harvesting as a decentralized solution for its water, like to ensure that households increase their water security. However, when investigated, it has been found that only middle class to upper class were able to install such systems. And bottom, they they investigated why did that happen, and they saw that there were many barriers that led to that conclusion. So first, the low-income groups, they were living in dense urban settlements or informal settlements. So they either lack the rooftop space to install rainwater harvesting, or they lack the legal tenure that allows them to install such systems. Second, when they looked at the policies that were calling for water reuse or rainwater harvesting, they exempted the affordable housing projects with the aim to reduce the pressure on those vulnerable populations. And so at the same time, they did not offer any subsidies or low interest loans. So the low income groups could not find a way to deal with the high upfront cost, which meant that infrastructure skipped over those communities entirely. Plus, this was enforced by the political reluctance. So there was a political reluctance to legitimize the informal settlements and the informal housing. So that's why they did not even offer subsidies or low interest loans, just of fear of legitimizing them. So that also led to disinvestment. And here we can see how all those barriers are actually connected, and they do not act in isolation. So what we found is that equity must be approached through the dimensions of distribution, procedural, and recognition. And what we propose is those 13 equity criteria that can be used to guide or evaluate non-conventional water resources initiatives, either in ex-ante planning or ex-post evaluation. But what I would like to highlight here is that we don't aim to call this like as a checklist. Rather, we would like for it to be seen as a guiding framework that shows that equitable access is a multidimensional concept, and we don't argue that all these criteria must be assessed for each non-conventional water resources project. Rather, it gives clarity and transparency in terms of what has really been done in relation to equity and where there is still room for improvement. What's next for us is that we want to take this criteria and we want to test and refine it through an empirical case study. We also want to map indicators from literature to also enable the practical use of those criteria, and integrate criteria and indicators into water policy analysis modeling. And we aim to use agent-based modeling. And this is for me for today's presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to your questions and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. There we are. I'm wondering first if you could dive a little bit more deeply into the 13 equity criteria that you're proposing, and talk about which you think would be the hardest to implement in real world non-conventional water resources.
Yeah, so like maybe what we have found so far is that most studies actually looked into distributive equity. So I would say it was easier maybe to evaluate distributive equity in comparison with procedural and recognition. And I would maybe assume that procedural and recognition is maybe the harder thing to do, especially when you want to implement a project and you are like time bounded with resources. So that's why we also would like to try to map clear indicators that can maybe not every criteria needs to be met, but just some of them, so that we can improve how we assess equitable access.
You also mentioned agent-based modeling in your last slide, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a bit about, it sounds like you have a lot of really exciting research directions in the future. What kind of questions do you hope agent-based modeling can help answer?
Yes, so our like our planned empirical case study will be in Jordan, and there's actually an agent-based model that is now available online that is about evaluating water policies. But when it comes to equity, their indicators are very, like the indicators are like only a few, and mainly feeds into the distributive dimension. So what we want to do is to try to maybe contribute more into the indicators and to see like how the different water policies have different equity implications. And this is what we are aiming to do.
How did you choose your study sites?
So I'm Jordanian, so it was very easy to select Jordan. Plus, Jordan really faces severe water scarcity, and we are adopting non-conventional water resources like from a long time, but there has been any study conducted that looked at rainwater harvesting or decentralized solutions at more of an equity perspective. Because also in Jordan, you see that there are some communities that are well connected to the network, but some are still not. So that's why I picked Jordan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. And I know that context matters when it comes to equity. So
Yeah.
the 13 indicators that you listed, do you think context we are working within Jordan, right? So if we send it to somewhere in Sub-Saharan Africa or South America, how do you think context will play out considering these 13 indicators?
Yes, definitely. And this is one of our main, our main conclusions when we said that those criteria are not a checklist. Rather, they are context sensitive, and you should aim to prioritize some of them based on the location where you are, or based on the locations where you want to implement solutions. And of course, some of them would make more sense to look at them in certain locations, while others in other locations.
Okay, through the systematic review, did gender and behaviors play an important role in terms of equity, and how did that play out?
So there were some case studies where, especially when women were the ones responsible for collecting water, gender played an important role when we talked about equitable access and in having their voices heard when, for example, we want to install rainwater harvesting, or we want to install a greywater reuse system. So having their voices heard in the planning and in the design, and how they can access such solutions. Also, do they have the technical capacity to run those systems, especially that they are the ones who are responsible for collecting water. So of course, in areas where women are taking more of a role, then it plays a big role in the recognition, especially in the recognition equity. So looking at the users and who are the expected users, what are their experiences, what are their abilities.
Okay, I also saw that infrastructure played an important role in terms of distributive equity, and I know water issues are transboundary. Or how do you think transboundary water governance will affect some of these indicators?
Yes, so we actually haven't looked at transboundary case studies. So those criteria are more fit into decentralized applications of non-conventional water projects, or centralized but in the same country. So we haven't really, those criteria, I wouldn't say that they are fit for exploring non-conventional water resources projects at its transboundary level. Although there are some cases that are happening where, for example, a desalination plant could feed into two countries, for example, to Mexico and to the US. So there are already examples about that. but it's not like our focus was more focusing at the wash sector, at the household level, and not at the transboundary level.
Okay, following up on your first response, the world out there is uncertain. Do you think, or maybe future scenarios or future events like flood, like the global climate change, can have impact or make us revise some of these indicators?
Like maybe, for example, the first one, which is water security, which talks about like meeting the basic demands and basic needs. And since climate change could affect definitely the water quantities or the water quality in a certain region, and of course, you would see that the coping abilities to such shortages will be very different across user groups, across like economic status. So I think like the water security is very important here when we deal about climate, like when we deal with topics like climate change, and we like users who already are very vulnerable, they will be more vulnerable. So future non-conventional water resources projects should also try to aim to target these before.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Nof, for the insightful and useful presentation. My question is about the criteria you have used for this study. Can it be applied for war zones? And for example, what's happening in Gaza nowadays, and the lack of access to safe water, particularly through non-conventional water resources. Gaza depend on water desalination because there is a huge scarcity in water. They also depend, try to pilot reuse for wastewater. But currently, out of sudden, everything was destroyed. Nobody have equitable access to safe water. How would your criteria would be applied to such contexts, such zones, particularly that accessibility and equity is a human right issue?
Yeah, definitely, and definitely, I would see that it could be applied to such a case study. I think maybe the fact that maybe infrastructure is not like the thing with what's happening in Gaza is that even if infrastructure is available, with what's happening, infrastructure is collapsing. So first, the fact that they depend on outsourced water also limited their access with what's happening, and with everything that is happening now, even if they do have the infrastructure, it would also result that the access is really like the access is very, very limited. So it's definitely a case, and it's also definitely a push for like building resilience through having decentralized solutions in such areas or in such regions that are very like war sensitive.
Do you think that there is a need, for example, to introduce another theme within this criteria to cover political barriers, to highlight the political barriers and the weaponization of such issue, and how can I say it? The obligation towards human rights and human rights agreements and issues like this. Would this criteria accommodate such a new theme from your opinion?
That's a very, very great point. And I feel like those discussions that we're having now and also the empirical application of those criteria will actually help to test and refine them. So like what you are saying are very valid points that our criteria now, maybe they do not address them completely, but it's through the application of empirical case studies is where we can refine those criteria and make them more suitable to other cases. Yeah, that's for sure.
We have a question online. Nargis says, thank you, Nof. To what extent do you think the outcomes of this research can contribute to improving water equity indicators and supporting more just decision-making in water resources management?
I would say it's just a very first step. So like I mean those criteria are still very like at a very high level scale, and they still need to be refined, and they still need to be downsized into like measurable indicators that can help decision makers in improving water access and in improving sustainable water management. So we so it's the first step, let's say.
And I know this is sort of in preliminary stages, but have you thought about if these criteria would apply to other fields such as energy management or other related areas?
So far, how we identified those criteria were basically based on the literature and based on case studies that were implementing non-conventional water resources projects. I would say so maybe there is some aspects that we have missed when it comes to energy initiatives. I would say definitely there are some complementaries, but like for having something specific for energy, then there would be need to like a mapping done for the energy initiatives that have been conducted. So yeah.
And to sort of follow up on what Dr. Abu Shamar was suggesting about incorporating, these additional types of criteria, I'm wondering why you think recognition equity specifically is so often overlooked, and if that's, it seems like it's related to what the power dynamics. I wonder if you could reflect on why you think that might be.
I think like at least the type of studies that looked into recognition, they were very much like socially focused, and they were like it was like it needed it needed more exploration and more like it was hard to generalize like every case was very specific, so we tried to like maybe try to make it a bit more concrete by saying that for example just acknowledging that there are diverse needs, acknowledging that there are diverse abilities. That's the first step when you want to like do when you want to conduct an unconventional water resource project, but like I don't have a clear answer to why it was, but I feel like maybe such studies really require very detailed detailed mapping of a certain specific case study.
Yeah, it seems like you're dealing with a lot of complexity. You have another comment. Nargis says that we know that decision makers are at the front line of water resource management, but convincing different sectors to adapt and apply new indicators can be very challenging, especially when interests diverge.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed the question.
It was just, I think it was a comment.
A remark.
I guess I'd just like to first say thank you so much for this really interesting work. Really looking forward to see what's next. I don't know if you'd like to conclude with a little bit more about your next steps, but really, really interesting work.
Yes, and thank you for like for giving me this chance to present, and very happy like to keep this conversation up and to present what's coming next.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye. Enjoy your day. Bye.
Colleagues.